I worked for Dr. Dre, and he told me the real Tupac is alive and healthy. But when he took me to see him, I realized healthy was the cruelest lie I'd ever heard. What I'm about to tell you will sound impossible, but I've seen things that have destroyed my ability to sleep, to listen to music, to look at missing person posters without my hands shaking. Tupac Shakur did not die in 1996. And after 3 years of watching what he's become, I know that death would have been mercy. Getting hired as Dr. Dre's personal assistant in 2019 felt like winning the lottery. I grew up in Compton. My mother worked 3 jobs just to keep us fed, and Tupac's music was the only thing that made the violence and poverty bearable. Now I was walking into Dre's studio compound, surrounded by platinum records and the smell of money I'd only dreamed about. But the interview was not normal. Dre did not ask about my skills or my resume. He sat across from me in his office, hands folded, eyes studying me like I was a problem he was trying to solve. "How do you feel about secrets?" he asked. I laughed nervously, said something about confidentiality being important. He did not smile. "No, I mean real secrets, the kind that eat at you, the kind that make you wonder if knowing the truth is worth the cost." I should have walked out right then. Instead, I told him I could handle anything. I needed the money. I needed the opportunity. I needed to prove that a kid from Compton could make it in rooms like this. He hired me on the spot, but with a condition that made my stomach turn. "You'll work normally for 6 months," he said, sliding a contract across the desk. "Standard assistant duties. But if you prove loyal, if you prove you can keep your mouth shut, your responsibilities will expand. You'll see things that will change how you understand everything, the industry, music, life itself." I signed papers I barely read. The salary was 6 figures. Life-changing money. "One more thing," Dre said as I stood to leave. "Never ask about Thursday afternoons. Never touch my Thursday schedule. And never, ever try to enter the West Wing without my explicit permission." I nodded, thinking it was some celebrity eccentricity. Maybe he had therapy or secret family or something mundane he wanted private. What I did not know was that every Thursday, Dre was visiting a man who'd been trapped in the same room for 23 years. A man who could not die no matter how much he begged to. The first 6 months were almost boring. I managed schedules, coordinated studio sessions, picked up dry cleaning, handled the minutia of running a billionaire's life. But there were cracks in the normalcy that I could not ignore. Every Thursday at 2 p.m., Dre's calendar simply read, "Maintenance," in all caps. 4 hours, blocked out, unmovable. When I once suggested rescheduling a major meeting into that slot, Dre's face went cold in a way that made my blood freeze. "Never touch Thursday afternoons," he said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "That's not a request. That's the only rule that matters." I never brought it up again. The West Wing became an obsession I could not shake. It was part of the compound connected to the main building, but it had its own entrance, its own security system, reinforced doors with biometric scanners. No windows. I'd watch staff members badge in and out, always in pairs, never making eye contact with anyone when they emerged. They looked tired, haunted. One of the senior audio engineers, a guy named Pete who'd worked with Dre since the 90s, pulled me aside one afternoon. We were alone in a hallway, and he grabbed my arm with surprising force. "Whatever they show you eventually," he whispered, his breath smelling like whiskey at 2 p.m., Just remember you can leave. I should have left 20 years ago. I did not. Now I cannot unhear things. I cannot forget what I know." "What are you talking about?" I asked. He let go of my arm like I'd burned him. "You'll find out. Everyone does if they stay long enough. Just remember you have a choice. I did not think I did, but you do." He walked away before I could ask anything else, and 2 weeks later, he was gone. Fired, I was told. Personal reasons. But the thing that really shattered my peace of mind was the invoice. I was cleaning up Dre's desk. He'd left for a session, and I found a shipping confirmation that had been partially shredded. Curiosity made me piece it together. Medical equipment, lab-grade supplies, prescription medications I'd never heard of with names that looked more like chemical formulas than drugs. And the delivery address was not the main compound. It was the West Wing. Specifically, Archive Medical Suite, Room 96, Room 96, September 1996, the month Tupac died. My hands started shaking. I took a photo before I could think better of it. When Dre found out, and he did find out because apparently every phone on the property was monitored, he did not yell. He did not threaten. He just made me unlock my phone, watched me delete the photo, then went through every app, every cloud backup, every possible place I could have stored that image. "You're at 5 months, he said quietly. "One more month and you'll understand why that invoice matters. One more month and you'll wish you'd never seen it. But you've proven you're curious. And curious people either leave or learn the truth. Which one are you?" I did not leave. God help me. I did not leave. On my 6-month anniversary, Dre called me into his office. He looked older than I'd ever seen him, exhausted in a way that money could not fix. "You've been loyal," he said. "You've kept your mouth shut. You do not panic easy. So tomorrow is Thursday, and you're coming with me to see him." "See who?" I asked, even though my stomach already knew the answer. "The reason for everything," Dre said. "The reason I cannot sleep. The reason I've spent 23 years managing something that should have ended in 1996. He stood up and walked to the window, his back to me. "Tupac Shakur did not die. And after you meet him tomorrow, you're going to understand that the real horror is not death." My entire body went cold. "The real horror," Dre continued, "is when death refuses to come." Thursday came, and I felt like I was walking toward my own execution. The security process to enter the West Wing was more intense than anything I'd experienced. Even more than airports after 9/11. Biometric scans, retinal identification. I had to surrender my phone, my watch, anything with a camera or recording capability. I signed documents so dense with legal language that I knew I was signing away my rights to ever speak about what I was about to see. Dre was silent the entire time. His jaw was clenched, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. I'd never seen him look afraid before, but that's what I saw in his eyes. Fear. We walked through hallways that smelled like hospitals, antiseptic and something else, something organic and wrong. The walls were soundproofed. The lighting was soft, almost gentle, but it could not hide the medical equipment lining the corridors. Heart monitors, IV stands, machines I did not recognize, humming quietly like they were breathing. I could hear someone crying in the distance, soft, rhythmic sobbing that made my skin crawl. "How many people work here?" I whispered. 17 medical staff, Dre said without looking at me. "All specialists, all under NDAs that make yours look like a permission slip." Most of them have been here for over a decade. Doing what? Keeping people alive who should not be. We stopped at a door marked only with the number 96. No nameplate, no window, just a number that made my chest tight with recognition. Dre turned to me, and I saw something in his face I'd never seen before. Shame. Deep, corroding shame that looked like it had been eating at him for decades. Everything you know about September 13th, 96 is partially true, he said. Tupac was shot. 4 bullets, just like the report said. He went to University Medical Center, but he did not die there. He could not die. And that's when we realized we'd created something worse than death. He placed his hand on the biometric scanner. The door clicked open. The human body was not meant to do what his is doing, Dre continued. Consciousness was not meant to experience what he's experiencing. We tried to make him immortal, and we succeeded. But immortality without the mercy of death? That's not a gift, that's hell. The door swung open, and I saw a room that looked like a luxury apartment had been merged with a medical facility. Expensive furniture from the 90s. Leather couches, a 4-poster bed, shelving units filled with vinyl records. Platinum albums on the walls, all of them from 1996 or earlier. A recording booth in the corner, surrounded by equipment that looked vintage but meticulously maintained. And sitting in a chair by a window that showed a fake view, a screen displaying a sunny day in Los Angeles, was a man who looked exactly like Tupac Shakur. My legs stopped working. My brain stopped working. Everything I understood about reality shattered in that single moment. He turned slowly and I saw his face. Older, but not old enough. He should have been 48 if he'd lived. This man looked maybe 35, 40 at most. His skin was smooth, almost unnaturally so. His eyes were clear and bright in a way that made them look wrong. Too healthy, too vibrant for someone who should be middle-aged. But those eyes held something that made me want to run screaming from the room. Exhaustion. Not physical exhaustion. Soul exhaustion. The look of someone who'd been awake for 23 years without a single moment of peace. New assistant, he said, and his voice was Tupac's voice, exactly as I'd heard it in thousands of songs and dozens of interviews. You're gonna ask if I'm real or if you're losing your mind. Everyone asked that first. I could not speak. My mouth was open, but no sound came out. Tupac, because it was him, it was really him, smiled, but there was no humor in it. Yeah, that's the usual reaction. Do not worry, you'll find your voice eventually. Took Dre 3 days to say a full sentence when he first saw me after the shooting. Dre moved past me into the room, his movements practiced and weary. This is real, he said to me, though he was looking at Tupac. As real as anything gets. And I'm going to tell you exactly how this happened, because you're going to help me take care of him now. You do not have a choice anymore. Once you walk through that door, you're part of this whether you want to be or not. What I did not know then was that taking care of him meant watching a man slowly lose his mind while his body refused to let him die. Dre told me everything, and every word felt like a nail being driven into my skull. In early 1995, Tupac was approached by representatives from a biotech venture that had connections to major entertainment corporations, labels, pharmaceutical companies, billionaires who saw the music industry as a testing ground for experimental medicine. They offered him something that sounded like science fiction. A treatment that would extend his life, enhance his physical vitality, make him capable of creating and performing at peak capacity for decades beyond normal human limits. They told him he could outlive his enemies, Dre said, pacing the room while Tupac stared out the fake window. They told him he'd have time to finish everything he started. All the albums, all the activism, all the change he wanted to make. They offered him immortality, and he took it. Tupac laughed bitterly at that. I was 24 and thought I was going to die young anyway. The life I was living, the beefs, the threats, the violence, I figured I had maybe 5 years left. So yeah, when some people in suits told me they could make me live forever, I said yes. Seemed like a good deal at the time. The treatment was a series of injections and gene therapy sessions that lasted months. Cutting-edge cellular regeneration technology that was decades ahead of anything publicly available. They monitored him constantly, took samples, adjusted dosages. He felt incredible, stronger, faster, sharper mentally than he'd ever been. And then September 7th, 1996 happened. The shooting. 4 bullets, 1 to the chest, 1 to the arm, 2 to the thigh. They rushed him to University Medical Center, and that's when the doctors discovered something that made them call the people behind the treatment immediately. Tupac's wounds were healing. Not slowly, not over weeks. They were healing in real time, visible to the naked eye. Tissue regenerating, blood cells multiplying at an impossible rate. His body essentially rewriting its own injuries out of existence. By hour 6, the chest wound had closed, Dre said, his voice hollow. By hour 12, the bullets were being pushed out of his body by new tissue growth. By hour 18, the only evidence he'd been shot was the scars, and even those were fading. But there was a problem, a catastrophic problem that nobody had anticipated. The treatment had worked too well. Tupac's cellular regeneration had exceeded every parameter. His body was essentially fighting aging itself at a molecular level, and the side effects were devastating. I started forgetting things, Tupac said quietly. Time got weird. I'd wake up thinking it was Tuesday, but it was actually Friday. I'd forget conversations I'd just had. I could not remember if something happened yesterday or last year. My mind started slipping. The people behind the treatment panicked. They could not let him go public. He was unstable, disoriented, a walking catastrophe that could expose everything they'd done. But they also could not let him die because he was their proof of concept, their success story. So they made a decision that haunts me every single day. They declared him dead. They created false medical reports. They held a funeral with a sealed casket. They let the world mourn him while they moved him to this facility, this prison disguised as medical care, where he's been ever since. 23 years, Tupac said, turning from the window to look at me. 23 years in this room. And physically, I've aged maybe 5 years. My body's perfect, stronger than it's ever been. I could probably live another 200 years at this rate. He walked toward me, and I could see the madness lurking behind his eyes. But my mind is breaking. Every day I lose a little more. I forget who I am. I forget what year it is. Yesterday, I spent 3 hours convinced I was late for a recording session with Snoop. 3 hours of screaming panic before I remembered that Snoop's albums came out decades ago, and I was not actually late for anything because I'm never going anywhere. Dre's voice cracked. The human consciousness was not built for this. Memory formation depends on temporal markers. Aging, changes in your body, the physical passage of time. But when your body does not age, when every day you look in the mirror and see the same face you saw in 1996, your brain cannot anchor memories properly. They float, they scramble. The past and the present blur together until you do not know what's real anymore. Tupac sat back down in his chair, his hands trembling. I remember my childhood better than I remember yesterday. I can tell you every detail of recording California Love, but I cannot tell you what I had for breakfast. My life is becoming a loop, and I'm trapped in it, watching myself disappear piece by piece while my body stays young and healthy and refuses to let me go. He looked at me with tears streaming down his face. They made me immortal, and immortality is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. But what I did not know then was that Tupac was not the only one trapped in this nightmare. Over the next 3 months, I became part of the rotation of people managing Tupac's care, and every day revealed new layers of horror I was not prepared for. His cellular regeneration was not just healing injuries. It was essentially attacking aging itself, and the results were grotesque. I was there the first time I saw what the medical staff called overhealing. Tupac woke up screaming, clutching his left arm. We rushed in to find the bone had calcified with extra density. His body had decided the bone was not strong enough and had reinforced it without reason, causing excruciating pain as the bone expanded inside his arm. The medical team had to surgically shave down the excess bone growth. This happened once a month like clockwork. Different bones, different parts of his body just randomly deciding to improve themselves. The scars from the 1996 shooting were their own nightmare. They would heal completely, then reopen, then heal again, an endless cycle. I watched a bullet wound on his chest close, fade to smooth skin, then tear itself open again 3 days later for no medical reason at all. His body could not decide if the scars were injuries that needed healing or permanent features that should remain. It's like my body is at war with itself, Tupac told me during one of his lucid moments. Every cell trying to be perfect, fighting each other to see who can regenerate faster. I'm not a person anymore. I'm a biological experiment that would not stop running. The medication regimen was insane. Anti-rejection drugs to keep his immune system from attacking itself. Immunosuppressants to slow the cellular regeneration. Sedatives for the panic attacks. Antipsychotics for when his grip on reality completely shattered. Dozens of pills every day, adjusted constantly, trying to find a balance that would keep him stable. But the physical horror was nothing compared to the psychological deterioration. I was there for his first full psychotic break during my tenure. It was a Tuesday morning, I remember, because I just brought him breakfast, when he suddenly stood up and started pacing frantically. "I'm late," he kept saying, his voice rising to a shout. "I'm late for the studio. Dre's waiting, and we're supposed to finish the album today. Why did not anyone wake me up?" I tried to calm him down, told him he was not late for anything. He grabbed my shirt with terrifying strength. "Do not lie to me. It's 1996. We have deadlines. Death Row is counting on me." It took 3 security personnel to restrain him. He fought like a wild animal, screaming about contracts and recording sessions and people who'd been dead for years. When they finally sedated him, he collapsed in my arms, sobbing. "Why cannot I remember what's real? Please tell me what's real." I could not answer him. I did not know anymore either. The notebooks were the worst part of my job. Tupac filled dozens of composition books with the same entries over and over again. What year is it? How long have I been here? Why cannot I remember yesterday? Is my mother still alive? Page after page, his handwriting changing from his normal neat script to childlike scrawls to barely legible scratches. sometimes all in the same notebook. I found one entry that was just the word help, written 847 times. I counted. The medical staff made me listen to the recordings. They said I needed to understand the full scope of what I was dealing with. Hours and hours of Tupac trying to write new music, trying to rap, trying to create. But he could not finish anything because his thoughts would not stay coherent long enough. I listened to one session that destroyed me. He started a verse, something about redemption and resurrection, and got 4 bars in before he stopped. Then he started the same verse again from the beginning. Same words, same delivery, stopped at the same place, started again. He did this 15 times, his voice getting more desperate each repetition, until finally he broke down sobbing. I used to be somebody, he cried on the recording. I used to make people feel something. Now I cannot even remember how a rhyme scheme works. I'm still here, but everything I was is gone. I'm a ghost haunting my own body. Dre told me one night, both of us exhausted after a particularly bad episode, they wanted an immortal artist. Someone who could create forever, generate profit forever. What they got was a man trapped in an infinite loop of his own consciousness. The cruelest prison ever designed. Not made of walls or bars, but made of his own cells refusing to let him die. I started having nightmares. I'd dream of my own cells turning against me, my body refusing to age while my mind rotted away. I'd wake up checking my skin for signs of unusual healing, terrified that somehow the treatment was contagious. But nothing prepared me for the day Tupac looked at me during one of his rare lucid moments and said, I know what I am now. I'm not a person anymore. I'm a warning. I'm proof that some mercies, like death, should never be tampered with. He grabbed my hand, his grip weak despite his perfect physical health. I used to pray I'd die young and leave a beautiful corpse. Now I'm begging for old age and decay, and my body would not give me even that. I'm becoming a ghost wearing my own skin, and there's no end in sight. Then he asked me a question that still keeps me awake at night. Do you think anyone else took the treatment? Do you think I'm the only one trapped like this? I did not have an answer, but I was about to find out the terrifying truth. I was not supposed to see the security logs. That's the thing about working in a facility like this. There are clearance levels above clearance levels, secrets within secrets. But one night, working late in Dre's office while he was on a call, I saw his computer screen before it went to sleep. A monitoring system, multiple rooms, multiple feeds, multiple names I did not recognize, just patient numbers. But there were 4 other active patients in the archive. 4 other people being kept alive against the natural order of things. My hands went numb. My visions tunneled. I stared at that screen, watching 4 other feeds showing 4 other rooms with 4 other people who looked too young for how long they'd supposedly been there. When Dre finished his call and found me staring at his screen, he did not yell. He did not threaten. He just looked more tired than I'd ever seen a human being look. Sit down, he said. You want the full truth? Fine, you've earned it. But once I tell you this, you can never leave. You understand? You'll know too much. You'll be as trapped as they are, just in a different kind of cage. I sat. I did not have a choice. Tupac was not the only one, Dre said, pouring himself a drink I'd never seen him touch before. The experiment ran from 1992 to 1998. The Biotech Corporation, and I still cannot tell you their name because they have reach you cannot imagine. Targeted young, healthy, incredibly valuable people in the entertainment industry. Musicians, producers, a couple of actors. People who generated massive revenue and could be controlled through contracts and NDAs. He pulled up files on his computer. Photographs, medical records, death certificates that I recognized from celebrity obituaries I'd read years ago. Some of them died when the treatment failed catastrophically. Dre continued. Their bodies aged in reverse, or their cells started multiplying uncontrollably like cancer, or their organs just liquefied. Those deaths were covered up. Overdoses, car accidents, suicides. Whatever narrative would make people stop asking questions. He showed me a photograph of a musician I'd loved as a kid, someone who'd supposedly overdosed in 1994. In the photo, his body looked like it was melting from the inside out, his skin gray and deteriorating while his eyes were still, open and screaming. Some fled before the side effects fully manifested, Dre said. Those ones were hunted down. Neutralized is the term they used in the reports. I do not know what happened to them, but they disappeared completely. No bodies, no graves, just gone. He pulled up images of missing persons, musicians and artists who'd vanished in the 90s and early 2000s, people I'd assumed ran away from fame or died in ways their families kept private. And then there are the survivors, Dre said. 5 people who made it through the treatment, who experienced the full effects, who became like Tupac, immortal, indestructible, and psychologically destroyed by their own biology. 4 others. 4 people in rooms like Tupac's, trapped in facilities like this one, unable to die, unable to live, suspended in a nightmare that had lasted decades. Who are they? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I cannot tell you names, Dre said. I would not. But you've mourned them. You've played their music at important moments in your life. You've probably cried when you heard they died. The whole world mourned them, never knowing they were still conscious, still suffering, still trapped. He showed me security footage from the other rooms. I could not see faces clearly, but I could see enough. People in medical gowns pacing their rooms. People strapped to beds during episodes. People sitting motionless for hours, staring at nothing. People who'd been famous, beloved, influential, reduced to prisoners of their own biology. Why are you keeping them here? I demanded, anger finally cutting through my shock. Why not let them go? Why not tell the truth? Dre's laugh was bitter and broken. Let them go where? They cannot reintegrate into society. They need constant medical monitoring or they'll hurt themselves or others. Their psychological state makes them a danger to everyone, including themselves. And if we tell the truth, he leaned forward, his eyes hard. The corporations behind this have resources you cannot fathom. They've made entire federal investigations disappear. They've silenced journalists, paid off politicians, destroyed anyone who got close to the truth. We speak up. We do not become heroes. We become problems they solve permanently. I felt sick. So you just keep them locked up? Forever? We keep them alive, Dre corrected. We keep them as comfortable as possible. We try to manage their suffering. That's all we can do, because the alternative, exposing this and watching them get moved to black site facilities where they'll be experimented on even more, is worse. I stood up, pacing, my mind racing. How are you okay with this? How do you sleep at night? I do not, Dre said, simply. I have not slept through the night in 23 years. Every time I close my eyes, I see their faces. I hear Tupac screaming during his episodes. I think about the others, alone in their rooms, losing themselves piece by piece. This is my punishment. This is what I deserve for not stopping it when I had the chance. He pulled out another document, a medical file with his name on it. I'm dying, he said. Stage 4 cancer. I've got maybe a year, probably less. I've refused aggressive treatment because, frankly, I welcome it. I want this to end. But before I go, I need to know someone will take care of them, someone who understands what they're going through, someone who would not just see them as problems to manage. He looked at me with desperate, haunted eyes. That's why I brought you in. I'm training you to replace me, to become the next person who manages this nightmare. Because if I do not, they'll bring in someone who does not care, who sees them as scientific specimens instead of people, and they deserve better than that. I realized then that I was not just an assistant anymore. I was being groomed to become the next guardian of living ghosts, the next person to carry this crushing secret, the next one to watch immortal people slowly lose their minds while their bodies remained perfect. What if I say no? I asked. What if I walk away? Dre's expression told me everything. Then you'll disappear, just like the others who tried to leave. They cannot risk you talking. You know too much now. I was trapped, just like Tupac, just like the others. Not in a room, but in knowledge that made me a prisoner of someone else's nightmare. But what Dre did not know was that I'd already made a different choice. For 3 months, I played my part perfectly. I showed up. I took care of Tupac and occasionally saw the others from a distance. I learned the protocols, memorized the security systems, became exactly what Dre needed me to be. But every night, I went home and planned. I could not expose the facility. That would get everyone inside killed, and I'd be eliminated before any investigation gained traction. I could not shut down the treatments. I did not have that access, and the medical staff were true believers who thought they were helping. But I could give Tupac something nobody had given him in 23 years. One night of being human again. I spent 2 weeks mapping every blind spot in the security cameras. I learned which guards took smoking breaks when. I figured out which access codes had not been changed in months. I studied the facility's rhythms like my life depended on it, because it did. On a Thursday night, always Thursday, the cosmic joke of it, I made my move. I entered Tupac's room at 11 p.m. with a change of clothes and a simple message. Do you want to see the outside world one more time? He looked at me like I'd offered him salvation and damnation in the same breath. His hands were shaking. They'll kill you for this. They'll kill both of us. Maybe, I said. But you told me you'd rather die than keep living this loop. So let's at least make sure your last memory is real. It took him 30 seconds to decide. 30 seconds of staring at me. Tears streaming down his face before he nodded. Getting him out was easier than it should have been. I'd learned that the guards were used to routine, that the cameras had blind spots, that nobody expected someone to try to escape because where would they go? We made it to my car in the parking structure, and I could feel Tupac shaking in the passenger seat as I drove past the front gate. The guard waved me through, just another employee leaving late, and then we were on the freeway, and Tupac was seeing Los Angeles for the first time in 23 years. He did not say anything for 10 minutes, just stared out the window at the city lights, at the cars, at the buildings that had changed, and the ones that had not. His breath was coming in short gasps, like he could not quite believe what he was seeing. Everything's different, he finally whispered. The skyline, the cars, even the street lights look different. This is not the LA I remember. A lot has changed, I said. The world moved on. Without me, he said. The world moved on without me, and I just stayed, frozen, while life happened to everyone else. Well, I drove him to Compton, to the neighborhoods where he grew up. We parked near a memorial wall, one of dozens scattered across the city, with his face painted huge and bright, surrounded by candles and flowers and messages from people who had loved him for decades. He got out of the car slowly, like he was not sure his legs would hold him. He walked up to the wall, to his own face staring back at him from the concrete, and made a sound I'll never forget. Somewhere between laughing and sobbing, the sound of a man confronting the absurdity of mourning himself. They never forgot, he said, touching the painted version of his face. I've been locked in that room thinking the world moved on and forgot me. But they never forgot. The wall was covered in messages. Some were old, faded from years of sun and rain. Some were recent, written in fresh paint. Still the greatest. Your words saved my life. 23 years and we still miss you. Teaching my kids your lyrics. You made me proud to be black. This one's from last week, Tupac said, pointing to a message scrawled in silver marker. A kid who was not even born when I supposedly died wrote that he listens to my music when he's scared, when he needs courage. He turned to me, tears streaming freely now. My music outlived me. My words are still reaching people I'll never meet. I achieved immortality the right way, through art, through impact, and I did not even need that goddamn treatment. We stayed there for hours. Tupac read every message, touched every candle, studied every photograph people had left. A few people walked by, late night wanderers, people paying respects, and they had no idea they were standing 20 feet from the man they were mourning. As the sun started to rise, Tupac sat down with his back against the memorial wall, looking up at the orange sky. Thank you, he said quietly, for reminding me I was human once, that I mattered for something other than being a medical curiosity. You still matter, I said. No, he replied. That person matters. The one they painted on this wall. But he's dead, even if his body's still walking around. I'm just what's left. The ghost haunting his legacy. We drove back in silence. Tupac stared out the window the entire way, memorizing everything, trying to burn it into his fractured memory before it slipped away like everything else. We made it back to the facility just before the shift change. Nobody noticed we'd been gone. I helped Tupac back into his room, back into his cage, back into his eternal loop. As I was leaving, he called out to me. Tell people, eventually, when it's safe, not to save me. It's way too late for that. But so this does not happen to anyone else. So nobody else becomes a prisoner of their own cells. I promise, I said. 2 days later, Dre called me into his office. He knew. Security footage had caught everything, but instead of threats or legal action, he just looked at me with something like respect. You gave him something I could not, Dre said. One real moment in 23 years of artificial existence, but you cannot work here anymore. It's too dangerous for both of us. They're asking questions I cannot answer much longer. He gave me a severance package large enough to keep me quiet for years, or large enough to eventually speak up when the time was right. I never saw Tupac again. Dr. Dre died 6 months ago. Cancer, just like he said. The obituaries praised his genius, his legacy, his contributions to music. Nobody mentioned the archive. Nobody mentioned what he'd been guarding. I do not know who's running that facility now. I do not know if Tupac is still in room 96, still unable to die, still losing himself piece by piece. I do not know what happened to the other 4 survivors trapped in their own immortal hells. But I know this: the real Tupac Shakur is alive. Not living, but alive. His body is healthy, perfect, indestructible. And that's exactly the problem. He's trapped in a loop of consciousness that's been running for nearly 3 decades. His mind is fragmenting. His memories are scrambling. His sense of self is dissolving. He experiences every moment of his imprisonment, while his body refuses to grant him the mercy of death. We did this. Our obsession with preserving genius. Our refusal to let legends die naturally. Our desire to squeeze every last drop of profit and glory from human beings we claim to love. We created the conditions for this horror. Somewhere right now, Tupac Shakur is sitting in a room, staring at a fake window, unable to remember if it's 1996 or 2025. Unable to die, unable to live. His body is healthy. He's alive. And that's the most horrifying thing I've ever witnessed. The treatment worked. Tupac achieved immortality. He just did not realize that immortality without death is not a gift. It's the cruelest punishment imaginable. An endless loop of consciousness trapped in a body that would not let go. A prison made of his own cells. A curse disguised as a miracle. He wanted to live forever. He got his wish. And now he's paying the price for it every single second of every single day, forever. The real Tupac is alive and healthy. And he's been screaming for death for 23 years.